Thank you very much. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here this evening. And I want to thank in particular Mr. Dumitru for inviting me and for inviting us, a delegation from the University of Bucharest. We are looking forward to this cooperation with ICT Berlin. It's very important for our curriculum and for the programs at the University of Bucharest. As Mr. Dumitru mentioned, my field is philosophy. And I'm going, in my short intervention, to present to you some work in progress. As a matter of fact, I already published some stuff on this issue, the philosophy of human rights. But today, since this is not a specialized audience, there are not only philosophers in this audience, although I am very happy to acknowledge that there are some philosophers who already gave their talks. I'm going to convey to you some thoughts that I have on this very important issue, which is the issue of individual human rights. So let me just start with sketching the historical background of my topic. There is this very familiar theme in Western politics and political thought that there is an intricate connection between political morality and social choice on the one hand, and the rights of the human individuals on the other hand, and that the former, the social choice, and politics are to be based entirely, or at least partly, on the latter, on acknowledging human rights. Major thinkers in whose works one can find this idea explicitly are John Locke and Thomas Paine in the classic European liberal tradition. And we can also find the ideas implicitly in the moral and political philosophy of Immanuel Kant, and somehow problematically in the work of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Stuart Mill. On the other hand, in practice, we find applications of this profound thought, the connection between how we act politically and how we preserve individual human rights, in the constitutional innovations of the American and French revolutions. Thus, and I quote from the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen, issued by the French National Assembly in 1789, if the end in view of every political association is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man, end of quote, then what follows is that the governments must be set up and constitution structured in such a way that it becomes impossible to ignore individual rights for the sake of the private interests of those in power or for the achievement of a so-called greater social good. As important as it is, this idea did not go unchallenged. Even in the liberal tradition, people like Jeremy Bentham, one of the founding fathers of utilitarianism, pointed out that rights could be taken seriously only if they were based on a theory of social and political morality, such as his own theory of utilitarianism. And Bentham very famously rejected the idea that the rights of man could be a starting point for political morality. So actually what he questioned was the fact that we can have a right-based ethics. But the critique was much stronger outside the liberal camp. Conservative and socialist thinkers alike considered with great suspicion that the claim that individuals might assert their interests against those of the communities of which they were a constitutive part. Now, the same controversies have dominated the politics and the philosophy of politics and moral philosophy in recent time. However, the current thought and discussion of rights has some distinctive features, of which I am going to point out two very important features. First, in contemporary philosophy, jurisprudence, and law, there has been a constant attempt to be much more precise in the use of the concept of a right. And there is a very important paper written almost 100 years ago by an American lawyer and philosopher, Wesley Hochfeld, which drew very important distinction between kinds of rights that we have. And actually, in my work, I am using the kind of right which is called a claim right. It's also obvious that the analytic project in the 20th century has been fueled by the atmosphere which we have in philosophy, analytic philosophy, which is very supportive to analysis in general and which is preoccupied with analytical rigor and precision. The second feature of the modern debate has been a strong emphasis upon the issue of the foundations of rights and right claims. Rights have not been immune from emotivist or relativist doubts about moral truth and objectivity. Sometimes, the doctrine of natural rights of man has been targeted from the angle of ethical skepticism. The idea of natural rights is seen as an obvious example of the naturalistic fallacy, as G. Moore called it, which is an inference which aims at deriving certain norms or evaluations from descriptive premises about human nature. Even worse, the idea that there might be such things as human rights, valid universally for all people in all times and places, has been rejected due to the wide variety of oppressive and inhumane practices that are accepted in different countries and societies. Now, contrary to these emotivist and subjectivist views, my own view belongs to a renewed version of the Aristotelian and Lockean tradition of individual rights qua natural rights. I am a natural right theorist. Thus, I defend a robust realist view of some individual rights qua natural rights, which is roughly the view that human individuals are entitled to claim some rights against others whose legitimacy and justification derive from their human nature, from just being humans, and which are not merely the outcome of the positive law of a society at a certain time or of some contingent social arrangements. The core of the theory is that each individual is entitled to a natural and fundamental right, such as the basic rights to life, freedom, and the pursuit of truth, for which we need a property rightly acquired. It appears that in order to give a justification for natural rights as a sort of sui generis of properties of individuals, one may opt for one of the following explanatory routes. And all of them have been actually put forward by important philosophers, and also, as it happens in philosophy, they also have been criticized by some other philosophers. First of all, individuals have rights because they are sentient beings, sentient creatures, who have the capacity to feel pain and suffer. The rights act as a protective shield, as it were, which is supposed to alleviate or to block human sufferance. Secondly, rights are indicative for certain intrinsic values which are not variable with circumstances, which are more or less universal. Third, rights are supervenient on human dignity. One is supposed to treat the others not only as means towards our own goals, but always, as Kant very well pointed out, as goals in themselves, as persons who have their own aims, goals, and aspirations. Fourthly, which is last point, last but not least as it is, rights are based on rationality. As Aristotle very well put it, the nature of all human beings is rationality, and individuals have the right to use proper means to pursue his or her own interests. What should be the role of cultural diplomacy with respect to promoting the philosophy of human rights? Since I'm coming from the academia, I'm a professor, I'm convinced that in the curriculum of our classes, of our seminars and discussions, we have to have more discussions about the philosophy of human rights, to promote human rights, the philosophy and the ideas which are behind the table of human rights. So it is very important to teach young people to accept the others as they are and to accept their rights, because I believe that this is one of the best ways to teach people to be more democratic, also to be more altruistic, to be better persons, and also to understand that they might be wrong when they criticize for no reasons or for good or for bad reasons, the behavior of other people. So in sum, I believe that the philosophy of individual rights goes hand in hand with virtue ethics, in which we are actually wanting to make room to ideas according to which we could become better persons. Thank you very much for your attention.